No, it's just Google.
Google.
Good.
All right. Welcome to the April meeting, Philly Mac admins. Sorry for the late start, but that's how traffic goes sometimes. So we're going to go right into what's new. Today we're going to talk about the new updates for iOS 11, tvOS 11, and watchOS 4. Of course, macOS High Sierra and Safari 11. We'll talk about the Office updates and Jamf Pro 10 updates. We'll do the security roundup, talk about items of interest and the conferences coming up. And that's what we got on. And afterwards, we'll have an open discussion, and we'll take it from there. So first up, iOS 11. Since we've been gone, iOS 11.3 was released. The link has further details on features and new things in the release. Some of the things were improvements to AR and ARKit, better iPhone, iPad battery management, and this is specifically the noise that was made about discovering the iPhones would throttle the battery performance in order to preserve battery. That is now being made explicit in 11.3, so you'll now be notified when the system wants to do that. So that's one of the big things. And also the iPad battery management is optimized for use in like kiosks. So it doesn't kill the battery if you keep it plugged in all the time. So it's a big security update, and there was 46 CVEs affecting 24 different processes that were closed. WebKit had the majority of them. If anybody's interested, the link is to the security update is on the slide as well. tvOS, watchOS 11.3, some bug fixes, performance improvements. Link is to the security update as well. 28 CVEs affecting 9 processes. Again, most of them WebKit. watchOS 4.3. Some new features as well, and oops, I forgot to update the link. 22 CVEs affecting 8 different processes. So, and macOS High Sierra. So this is a very large update as far as impact on everybody in this room. 10.13.4 was released. There is some features like business chats and other things that I really didn't pay attention to because that UACal and UAMDM are now live and in force. So that's kernel extension, whitelisting, and user-approved MDM, which, if you've been testing, is kind of making life a little difficult if you don't have an MDM server in your organization already. So some of the other things that are of interest to Mac admins in this update is that improved Spotlight results for files that are network shares and properly evaluates ACLs and SMB mounts, and adds a new erase install flag to StartOS install, which is the command line option available in install macOS, so you can automate the install of macOS on new Macs or reimage Macs. So, and system image utility will now create net install images that will do the erase install. This is something that's been sort of not working up until this point.
A point of note for the erase install flag is that it only works on APFS volumes. It does not work on HFS plus.
Yes. So APFS or die.
Yeah, actually. So you know.
Right. So also there's 37 CVEs closed, affecting 31 processes. Some of them are kind of egregious. There were some things with sysadmin control that had like plain text passwords and other things that I didn't have time to list on all the slides. But so yeah, security update 2018-02 for Sierra and El Capitan also contains some of these fixes that were involved, but not all of them, as is Apple's want. And then Safari 11.1 was also released. Details are on the link there. So Office 2016, 16.11 and 16.12 was released while we were away. The normal fixes to Outlook and Word, Excel, and PowerPoint, also new features which are detailed on the link included here. There's more collaboration and features added, and most of those features are for really the O365 customers. On-prem customers will probably get those features at some point in the next year or so. But Microsoft really wants you to be on O365, and we say this every month. So, but they're really pushing it. Big news, though, is that Microsoft's auto update application 3.18 was released and contains the MS Update command line binary. So you can now script Microsoft updates for the apps. And it's been a while since I've touched it, but you can actually, when you do that scripting, it does little notifications, so it'll let the users know that if an application is running, it needs to restart to fulfill the update. And then so you can script your updates now.
So it can make Macs more like Windows and have an update interrupt our users.
Well, yeah. But for organizations that need to be on a specific version of Office, so that's
really nice.
that's going to be really nice. Which is actually probably going to be us soon, since we're implementing NFA very shortly. So, Skype for Business is still kicking and is now on 16.16. While we wait for Teams to take over everything from Skype and Yammer and all that other stuff. So, the Office 2019 is going to be coming soon. My understanding, at least, is that it'll just be an inline update that comes monthly if you're already on Office 2016, and the 2019 is really just the branding. The bits aren't going to change much. So there's going to be some differences. Like I know. The Windows, because this is something that came out yesterday, the Windows version of OneNote will become like the Mac version of OneNote and not save locally once 2019 debuts. So, well, the OneNote 2016, the OneNote standalone version currently is like 32 bits, so they're getting rid of it entirely. So,
the other note is with this latest update is that Microsoft OneDrive now gets installed by default.
Oh yes, that's right. So, and this is
it does not start on startup though by default.
No, it's a standalone app, so it's a slightly different version than the one that's supplied by the App Store, but it's completely configurable by configuration profiles if you wanted to use that, or you could do it script too because it's all running defaults. So, well, also while we're away, yes.
Sorry, I was curious. Did they announce that 2019 is going to have interface changes, or is it going to look identical to 2016?
They have not said anything. I'm sure there's going to be interface changes.
They have mentioned a few times that
is it going to be like more Metro-y?
it's if you've seen Skype for Business, that's sort of the figurehead, if you will, of the new UI.
But they're getting rid of Skype for Business in favor of Teams, which looks totally different.
So the UI philosophy for Microsoft, they've completely moved away from Metro. It's something similar to Material from Google, and it's actually pretty pleasant. If you're on the, I think like the fast track for a lot of the Office stuff, you might have noticed, like with, for instance, Outlook Word, some of the accented UI features are starting to change. They're a little bit more colorful and easier to like just pick out what I'm looking at.
I really don't pay attention that much to the UI.
If they're taking 2019 like they're taking the rest of the suite, it's probably going to be like a nice, oh, this looks great, and it won't be a drastic like, oh my god, they reintroduced the ribbon
like they did before.
Yeah, I think they also mentioned that it may or may not be tied to the 2019 branding. It may be introduced before.
Right. So yeah, the features that are in Insider Fast right now are coming at some point Some of them, it's not, it's not a thing. It shows up in Insider Fast 1 month, and then the next month it goes in Insider Slow. The next month it goes in production. It's usually some things, if they need to continue working on, will stay in Insider Fast for a long time, and then eventually make it to the production once they finally iron out all the things. So, so changes coming to Office. So Jamf Pro released 10.3.0. And while we were away, and this one has full compatibility with macOS 10.13.4, iSierra, iOS 11.3, tvOS 11.3. For the Mac admin parts, one of the big changes is that for High Sierra Macs, it changes the order of operations for it to be more true UADM or more true MDM, and that it installs the profile first. Drops the profiles first, and then uses install application to drop the Jamf agent on, as opposed to Sierra clients and earlier, where it still drops the agent first and then has the agent install the profiles. So that's a big change. So also 10.3 does the UAK whitelist profile payload that actually works, that's actually compatible. The prior one sort of worked, and it's been one of those things with the UAK profiles that team IDs should work if you just list a team ID, but in practice you need really the actual bundle IDs as well for everything. And not entirely sure of whether that's a bug or an intended effect. But essentially, if you do just team IDs, if you look at the profile that comes down from Jamf in system preferences, it doesn't show you anything. It seems to be an empty payload, but there's stuff in there. But whereas if you do the bundle IDs, you see a list of whitelisted kernel extension bundles. So not entirely sure whether that's intentional or buggy yet. Other things that come along is that you can defer software updates and allow software update notifications for both Mac OS and iOS. And if you do those sorts of things, and they did close a lot of bugs, so product issues and defects. The full listing is there. They still have, I think something that they announced today, didn't make it in the slide, is their new Jamf iOS app that allows you to connect to Jamf Nation, log into your account, open support tickets, and all that. So they just announced that today. So another new thing for you to use, another new thing for you to download and hardly ever use on your phone. So, things that happened security-wise, or security roundup. So obviously the big news, since we were away, was that whole Facebook Cambridge Analytica scandal. The link to in the details lists to the Wikipedia article on it, which has lots of other links to news articles and analysis about why this is a big bad mistake on Facebook's part. And also from Facebook, they're being sued for their facial recognition technology, specifically because it violates a rarely enforced Illinois state law. So that'll be interesting to see how it's a privacy law that it violates, supposedly. But yes, it's not been a very good couple of months for Facebook. Something that happened today is Google App Engine disables domain fronting, which is something a lot of different apps like VPNs and Tor and Signal were using to try and get away from like state censoring, like nation state censoring. And domain fronting is basically where you could like send signals to Google, and then from there it would go somewhere else. But from an inspection point of view, it just looks like traffic going to Google because it's encrypted traffic going to Google. It's not going anywhere, and they can't see where it goes after it hits Google. So, but so this was like an unsupported feature or something that was an unintended side effect of the way they set things up, and they basically fixed it by they changed the network and disabled that essentially when they fixed their network. And so from one perspective, it makes it harder now for people to try and avoid, great firewalls and all that. On the flip side, they announced also that it was like, malicious actors were also using it to exfiltrate data. So, and a little bit of the good, a little bit of the bad. So it's gone, but it's gone now. So. There was, while we were away, there was Thomas, what's his name? Right on my head. Thomas Reed. Right. Thomas Reed detailed that a crypto miner, an application that had a crypto miner as part of it. It was part of sort of like the opt-out of ads feature. Like, it wasn't. So technically, it didn't violate the. Technically, it didn't violate the App Store terms because they were very upfront about it. But I think Apple changed the terms to basically say no crypto miners.
I think it was instead of in-app purchases.
Yeah. Instead of an in-app purchase, it was you can have this crypto miner. But they at least told you that you can install this crypto miner. Whatever. So at the RSA convention, Symantec talked about the iOS trust jacking. So the details, it's very, very complicated and also requires a lot of actual physical access to the phone. One of the things you have to do is basically reinstall essentially the OS in order to get this to work. It's I didn't get the whole article when I was reading it entirely because the details are very, very, very technical, a little bit beyond my ken. But the gist of it is that it's something that should be closed, but the risk to average users is low because it requires a lot. You actually have to have the phone in your hand. So, like people are not going to be drive-by violating, exploiting this. So, but still, it's kind of serious. So St. Patrick Worrell found a new variant on Ocean Lotus, which is a backdoor that was used primarily against things like civil rights groups and activists and some state actors as well. So this is just a new variant of that they discovered. I don't know if it's been uncovered in the wild. Other things that happened is Cisco released 22 security advisories, including 2 about hard-coded passwords in their software. So I'm sure they loved telling to the world about that, exposing that. Other things that happened was Greg Key started advertising an iPhone unlocker for law enforcement. And again, Thomas Reed had an article about this that raised a lot of security concerns about the use of this and wondering where these exploits were coming from and whether or not they had been closed, like which models of iPhones were affected and whether or not the newer versions of iOS had closed those exploits. But if you wanted to shell out $15,000, you could probably get your hands on them. So, I think also read later that one of the government agencies was interested in acquiring one. Mm-hmm. Was it the NSA maybe? Yeah, I want to say NSA. So
every single one.
They won't share it. Wasn't this also based off of just simple passwords too? Like I thought it
Yeah,
was
this,
something where it's like if you use alphanumeric,
there's there's a lot of
Well-
brute forcing in passwords.
Yeah, it's all brute force. It just depends. If it's I was listening to I believe it was Command and Control Power, it might have been Macmillan's podcast.
Right.
They were talking with somebody about it, and it can take up to 4 days, I think they said, to
Yeah.
go through a 6-digit or 6-character alphanumeric or something. like
Right.
that. But that's still pretty
It's pretty
pretty
that's-
good for law enforcement.
Yeah, that's not a long time.
Does anyone know if the 10-digit or 10 password try like formatting thing would that mitigate?
No,
this, or-
because it's what it seems like it does is it requires, I believe, 2 devices.
Yes.
And so you plug in your device that you're trying to crack, and then you plug in another device, and I believe the gray key kind of acts like a mediator in between it. So it kind of loads the software onto the key, and then it tries to crack it on the other. It's really interesting how it does it. It's kind of neat, but also
Very scary.
yeah, a little scary.
That's scary. So, items of interest. New version of Monkey was released. Looked like mostly a bug fix. It's got one. So, links are right there as well.
So it's you know,
Is the 3.3 is coming? Yes, that there should be a lot of new stuff in 3.3. That's something to look forward to. We'll probably talk about that in depth when it comes out. Intel says that it won't be able to fix some chips for the Spectre and the Spectre Plus flaws,
Looking around
maybe
for
some
surprises.
meltdown flaws.
So we knew that already.
What?
I thought we knew that when it came out.
Intel finally admitted.
Okay,
as
now
much.
it's just.
Yeah, they
They
also
publicly-
said they're not going to bother going back and fixing some because it's
Yeah.
too much work for not enough.
Well, I mean, it's
Systems and
Like the
Burning the
really,
hard drive.
like the really old chips that are affected by this, they're not going to buy.
Right.
Some of it too is it's much more than microcode updates. An actual like, this is just how this was designed. You either write software that doesn't leverage like prefetch or
Right.
you move on.
Right.
There's a reason why Apple came in.
Right. Rumored. So there was so in the last couple of weeks there was this, I think actually it was last week that this happened, where people were reporting this weird error with corpses, too many corpses.
Yes.
So that turned out to be a weird bug in High Sierra of the Docker directory D.
Too many corpses.
And what ended up following from that blog post was this link to basically recovering Mac OS on High Sierra and APFS, and it talks about that as well. So put that link in there. It's like how to troubleshoot and eventually recover Mac OS and APFS issues. So I thought that was interesting for everybody else. So Apple released a Mac OS security overview, and it's like very vague, as is Apple's want when they're doing things like this. But it's something new that they have done before in the past, so this is something of interest. So, and finally, we'll talk about conferences. So as we know, WWDC will be happening in June. For those of you,
Is there going to be any
for those of you in the audience,
representation?
I will be attending this year. It will be my first WWDC.
You'll be presenting.
I will not be presenting because only Apple engineers get to present. So I will just be listening and asking them questions.
Can you
So
by the camera?
if there's any questions you want to ask Apple Engineering, please forward them along to me. I will make a list and I will see if I can corner any engineers and talk their ears off until they hate me. So since I'm going, I might as well take questions from the community. Because I know not all of us get to go.
This is the first one in Apple's new place, right?
No,
The second one?
Second.
Second
Second
one.
one.
All right.
yes, they were in
They were the new one last year?
San Jose last year, yes. So Mac DevOps YVR will be happening in the same week, but several hundred miles north. So in lovely Vancouver. And PSU Mac Admins this year is July 10th to the 13th. which is, I know we will usually send a large Philadelphia area contingent over there, and we hope to do again this year. So, if you have a chance, it's a great conference to go to because it's local to all of us here, relatively local. That's like a 3-hour drive, but local enough. The registration fee is relatively cheap compared to most other conferences. It's right along the same lines. And you get Mac and Mins from all over the world coming from there. Europe, I think a couple of times some Aussies were there. And several of like the major movers and shakers in the Mac and Min world will also be there. Lots of talks that cover Mac and Min specific stuff, but also sysadmin and IT, work-life balance, those sorts of things. So it's a really in-depth conference and definitely well worth your time going. So I highly recommend PSU Mac. And of course, JNOC's happening this year in October, and I need to fix those dates.
One
because they're not the
day.
same day. So, yeah, so that's happening in October. And so that's all as far as what's new. So we're just going to open up the floor. Anything else to talk about? So, Dennis, do you have something?
No, but maybe, let's see. We're talking about DEP.
We can talk about DEP.
None of this is under review anymore.
So, what specifically? I mean, because if you want to turn into sort of a DEP gripe session, I'm perfectly fine with that.
Oh, so who was talking about DEP notified? Thanks, John.
John.
So, yeah, I mean, I
Let's
don't
hear
know.
about that.
I mean, I don't know if anybody cares too much about it. But
How many people are deploying via depth currently?
100% or just in
Or just deploying it, whether it's like in the test phase or you're actually doing production?
Test phase, all right.
We've finally made it to deploying faculty laptops using DEP, which is a big step for us because, so those of you who don't know, I work for University of the Arts. We have labs with tons of labs, and all these computers need to have the same software on them because teachers and students expect it. Currently with imaging, it works great. You just, you image your computer and it gets it. But with DEP, it's not as easy. You can't automate imaging. You can't automate, certain deployment because every computer still technically needs to be touched because of the whole setup process.
Yeah.
So Apple gives us the rollback feature, or until they give us the option like they did with the Apple TV to just skip all the setup steps, it's still kind of useless for us. So what we decided is that we're mostly going to be sticking with 10.12 until we are forced to go to 10.13, which Apple has pushed us a little harder now because being an art university, we rely on Final Cut Pro and Final Cut X, excuse me, and Final Cut, the latest version of Final Cut X, not 10.4, 10, excuse me, not 10.4, 10.4.1 requires 10.13. So a point revision has pushed us to use 10.13. So now I know.
Oh,
Same thing they did with Logic before. They made like 10.3, I think, worked with 10.11, and then 10.31 worked with 10.12. So
that sucks.
it's kind of a crappy thing to do sometimes when you do a point revision. I mean, why don't you just wait and just release 10.4 as, like they did with Pages, Numbers, and Keynote, where they made version 7 for, 10.12 only. So we looked at options for DEP deployment, and do you need me to stand in front of the camera?
No, you're good.
Okay. We looked at options for DEP deployment. There's a couple out there now. There's Splash Buddy, which is the big one that's really pretty, and it offers a lot of functionality, but there's a lot of setup on it.
Mimics the IBM experience.
Right. It's a really nice setup. It's just it does require a good amount of tinkering on the side. You have to name your packages a certain way. You have to have certain policies named a certain way. You have to upload HTML, I believe, to it and everything. Like it's like a little web window.
CSS.
Yeah.
uses a lot of CSS for the display. So
So we also, so we looked at DEP Notify, not DEP Notify, excuse me, which is by Joel Rennick, who does
Nomad.
Nomad, thank you. And he's worked a good amount on it, but I came across, and we tested it out a little bit, and it works pretty well for what we needed to, but we wanted a little more functionality with it. Splash Buddy allows for, I believe, user input, other things like that.
well,
No? Yes, no?
the current version, the current main branch does not, but
So it's very similar to DEP Notify then, because there is a branch of it by somebody in the Slack channel, username FGR, I believe it is. Give me 1 second, I just want to make sure I get that right, because
Not Frogger.
FGD, excuse me. Federico Diaz from Agile Mobility 360. If you go to the DEP Notify channel on Slack, he's in there all the time. He has a branch that allows you to customize user input. And that's what we wanted. We wanted to be able to, so how our systems work now, and I just got it set up this week. I'm really, really happy that we got it set up. Is that when your device goes into DEP, it'll automatically create our administrator account. And then you can then, after it creates the administrator account, you can close the laptop and put it away if you want. But if you're ready to assign that laptop to a user, you can just open it up, log in as MacAdmin, and then wait for the DEP enrollment to drop in. When it drops in, it opens up the app, and it waits for a user to hit the assign button. And when the assign button gets hit, you assign it to a user, you type the user's names in, you put the asset tag in, hit OK, drops a plist file, and then it installs all the stuff, and then it will rename the computer by the user or create a user account based on the user's name that you just put in. Right now, we just have it set to make the user account with the username as the password, and that's really about it. And it will rename the computer username hyphen whatever type of computer, MBA or MVP.
Are these domain accounts or are they just local accounts?
They are local accounts.
Okay.
It'll also then assign that computer to that user. So say I was signing up somebody else's computer. Normally, if you use DEP, you'd have to authenticate, and it would assign that user to you, the computer to you, which we don't want to do that. So we made so when you type in the created user, or the assigned user, it will automatically update the JSS, the Jamf server, to that user. Installs the stuff, reboots, and voila, you have a computer for that user all set up and ready to go with DEP, which really nice little setup that DEP Notify really helped us with it. And the guy FGD, the Federico, really helped out a lot with making that happen. And they're going to be adding more functionality to it. Something else is, I don't think this, let me make sure this is not an NDA. 1 sec.
Do you know if he's going to contribute back to the main branch?
So I've asked him if he has a GitHub branch on it or a GitLab branch. I think he does, but I assume he's going to put it back into the main branch. I don't know how it's working with Joel though.
Yeah, Joel would have to approve.
Right, Joel has to approve it, and it might be that Joel's like, no, we're just going to make this a secondary branch, which again, that's fine. I mean, as long as it works and it's it's stable and everything. So
right, for Splash Buddy, I think we're just waiting.
Yeah, I mean, I can demo it if anybody wants to see what it looks like, but I'm sure everybody gets the idea of it.
The user for branch of Splash Buddy, I think, is still in this.
Yeah, there's two branches of it, right? That people use, yeah.
But it should eventually be merged back into the main branch.
Yeah. So this is not under NDA, which is good. Jamf is going to be taking some user input next week, starting next week from a few users. I'm one of them, for their own built-in DEP screen. Which is really good. They're going to be showing off a couple ideas that they have next week. There is a feature request, I believe, for it on the Jamf Nation forums, and if you are interested in it, get on it, sign it up, and see if you can get in on the thing. It's next week for Monday through Wednesday. There's a bunch of slots, but you can ask. I think it's Amanda, I can't remember her last name, Amanda S. On Jamf Nation, hey, can we get on this? Because it'd be really nice if they build their own thing in there. It's probably a little ways off, is my guess.
Right.
But it's a good way to get information out there, and it's I'm really happy that they're actually taking not taking an initiative because they sat on it, but they're going to now put something in there that's built into the system that we're paying for. So.
It'd be really nice if they open source that so that you can use it with
Right.
other products.
Well, you know,
Jamf is
I
open
guess-
source some things, as we know, but yeah, they might not.
I see
You
them
know.
using a lot of
well,
things from the open source community. It'd be nice to see them contribute back.
Yeah, I mean, they
That's all.
already do recommend, they do with the Jamf and they already recommend a bunch of third-party things, of course, like
That's
when they
all-
do their presentations, they always recommend Splashboard and
right,
Deep.
and that's all Charles.
Yeah,
Charles.
Charles Edge, yeah.
And I know he's pushing for more Jamf contribution.
He also, I mean, he probably put out a little bit of a fire with that whole report that they put out last year that went out with about like, their little cock-up that they had,
The other one.
patent or third party or something like that,
Fisher
or
or
OSS, whatever it was, but
There was a woman in.
Yes.
yeah.
I forgot the name.
Right.
They put out a little white paper that was not accepted, or that was not taken well by a lot of people, which it shouldn't have been. It was them kind of bad-mouthing OSS.
Right.
Um,
It was a PR document.
Yeah.
So.
and it was really in poor taste, and thankfully they took it down right away, and like a bunch of people came and said, whoa. We weren't consulted with this, so.
Yeah. So, but getting back to depth. So.
Yes.
If you, the whole depth process is, if you're not currently on it now, you should at least be testing it right now.
Definitely.
Because as we see with like High Sierra, UAMDM, UAKEL, and there's going to be more sort of supervised features that are only going to be available through UAMDM. And the only way you can basically automate UMDM without having the user or somebody going in and manually clicking the approve button on 1013 and higher is through depth deployments.
Yeah.
So, so the whole, and this is something we've been talking about for a while now, the whole imaging game is changing.
Imaging still technically works on 1013. I've done it several times, but it's not.
Yes,
it's not good.
And Apple has deprecated NetBoot, NetInstall. It's probably not going to be in the server version 6 when they release that, or whatever they're going to call the next version of server.
You mean just a little window picture of a computer?
Yes.
Plus.
So, yeah,
Profile Manager 10.
Profile Manager Beta 17.
Profile
Right.
Manager Pro X.
Right.
So
So,
we have so much from Apple here.
so if you're not doing depth now, it's going to be increasingly harder to do traditional imaging as they go along, and probably is going to be really tough with the next version of the OS as well.
For some of the new faces here, what are you guys using to deploy your devices?
I'm just using Jamf, just OEM, and then policies and profiles.
Anybody
Is
else?
that going to be a problem
Anybody
going
using-
forward? I mean,
For
Well-
High Sierra and
Right.
High Sierra and newer, it's going to be
Well, 1013 4 and newer, is it?
yes.
Technically, yeah. So
So the current version of the OS and
Yeah.
anything newer.
the cheat way to do it is to install 1012 and then upgrade if you can, and if you can't install 1012, install 1013.
Right, because
and
you you can downgrade everything except the iMac Pro.
Everything good on 1012?
Everything else is technically good on 1012, even though it's shipping with 1013.
13.
Good to know. At
But
least.
you still can put 1012
Wait,
on.
so like right now, I'm just OEMing and then just configuring through Jamf with all of my policies and profiles and extension attributes and that sort of thing. I won't be able to do that?
No, that's fine. It all depends on
It's-
how you lay down your system.
Right. The big key for UAMDM is that the MDM profile has to come down through depth. Otherwise, you have to go into system preferences, click the MDM profile, and click accept.
Unless all your users are using 1012,
Right.
which is how we're doing it.
Right.
We're going to deploy the enrollment profile as a package through Wiki, and then upgrade people to 1013. And it will be user approved.
Right,
it will be
because
grandfathered into
if you do it that way, then everything is essentially grandfathered in. But I mean, it's a little early. It's a little early to speculate, but I think it would probably be. That's probably not going to be an option in whatever 10-fold
Right.
ends up being called. So
Yeah, and that's the reason why we started using DEP Notify. That's why we've been really looking into it, because we realized that we're going to start getting the computers in
right.
July or August.
Yeah,
and they're
and-
going to be coming with 1013, and some of them might not be able to go down to 1012.
Right. They haven't announced any new hardware
Not yet.
since this, but the moment except for the iMac Pro.
Yeah, the moment they do though, that's where
The
it's going
moment
to have
they
the
do,
T1 chip
though,
or
Just
T2,
like they've doing in
whatever.
the past, they make a firmware update change, and then now you cannot
Yeah.
downgrade the OS.
Or you can't.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a special build of the OS. We'll be able, and if they do secure boot on the Pro lines like we expect them to do, then secure boot will come to the MacBook Pro. We'll be able to net boot it anyway.
So get those
These changes are coming, and they're coming soon.
get those DEP.
You need to be
jobs
on. You need to have a plan for DEP enrollments, at the very least, and start testing it now.
I'm getting nervous. You guys are making me nervous.
Well, so what are you using to deploy your machines?
Okay, I'm very embarrassed right now.
No, it's okay.
No.
There is no judgment in this.
No.
Okay.
No.
I'm fairly new. I just started imaging,
It's okay.
or just like technically last year. So right now, we're like doing deploy, like our past imaging in the summer was definitely deploy studio
Right.
and management through ARD.
Okay.
I just started testing, doing, we upgraded our OS to, one of our older computers OS to 10.13, and we've been trying to push everything through ARD. And some of it has been successful by, like, our main thing was doing profile transfers, and everybody seems to be talking about making profile specific and then giving it to your employers or employees. That's not really the case for us. We kind of just have to have a custom profile every time something is made. And we're just trying to test that out, and then we're trying to find a way to get in all our applications.
How many Macs are you running?
I would say 200.
Are they all?
And actually, when we start doing our imaging we're getting new computers in July,
Right.
which is freaking me out too. And
It's all scary stuff that
Yeah.
you're hearing.
Yes.
especially just being in here for like a year, I'm
Yeah.
just like understanding what you guys are all saying, but like this is scary.
Are all your devices one-to-one, or are they like labs or house or offices or?
All of the ones that we're going to be doing is labs.
They're all labs. Okay.
So
So you're in a similar boat that I'm in, where we have 400 or so, 400 or 500 labs computers, and we don't know what we're going to do yet. Right now, our idea, since we're already running 1012, is we're probably going to just do a 1013 upgrade in place. Which one thing that's good about that is that you will get the firmware upgrade will go through. So in order to image, or in order to install, I guess,
Right.
1013 on any computer, it needs to go through a firmware upgrade.
Yeah.
So if you're running 1012 or anything less than that on a computer and you've never had 1013 on it, you won't be able to image to 1013 anyway. You have to physically install it
Yes.
with the installer, because it runs a firmware upgrade.
Right.
Once that's installed, though,
it connects to Apple, and it's like
well, it's in the
It's
installer.
part of that. It's part of that. The other part is there needs to be firmware update changes in order for the hardware to recognize the new file system APFS.
Right. Which, even if you're not using APFS, it still needs it.
Right. Because if you're running 1013, it needs to be able to address any APFS flags, which Sierra has no idea about.
It has some, but it just can't boot from it.
Right. So
As we see it.
my
So little support. You might
Yeah.
as well.
my suggestion for new computers is what I'm giving to my university, actually. So we're probably going to be getting. We usually end up getting like 30 to 50 machines about every year or so. We don't upgrade in like huge waves because frankly we can't afford it. So we'll get like 30 or 50 machines, and normally what we would do is the support services staff, the floor people, the ground people, basically, the people that are on the ground, they would go and they would take all the old computers out, put the new ones in, and then just wait for us to send up. In the past, we would just have them turn it on. And we would either send out a command, or they would turn it on and just hold end to net boot it. Well, they can't do that now. So what we're telling them to do, and I mean, it's kind of sucks because you can't just hold end and walk away, is we're going to just tell them to boot it and then go through the setup process, and we're going to come up with a DEP process, like similar to what I was just going over with DEP Notify. We're going to have a DEP process that just automates everything else. They log into one account and it just does it, and we don't have to touch it. And I'm about 60% there now with it, with what we have. The only issue is that you still have to click, 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 log in, okay, and then walk away, instead of and walk away.
See, that's gonna be a problem for me.
So,
Especially with,
I mean,
we're throwing Cisco ICE.
So you probably want to
So I
look
can't
at something
get
like simple NPM
Unless I'm in a lab, where
Right.
ICE is turned off.
What?
I can't get that.
or Jamf, but it all depends on
That's
what
gonna be your
what
issue.
your
What?
budget.
That's going to be your issue.
What?
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, so purchasing,
Yeah.
we're trying to go through purchasing right now.
No, that's gonna be a big
The
problem.
way that my supervisor was telling me, kind of too late. I'm
I
not
just
sure. He
avoided
said he was
it
gonna
in
still
one
talk to
space.
purchasing to see if we can like do
Oh, so it's
that.
too late in the budget year?
I think so, yeah.
I mean, well, one thing, if you talk to Jamf, if you talk to Jamf and you go with their whole support team, so
Put
they'll
on my
help you
bags.
navigate, particularly because they'll do a jump start, which is required.
You need to be able to
And they
pick
basically
Got my
that,
team instinct pin.
you pay for their engineers to come out and help you get everything set up and get started. So,
NYU pin.
which is good.
That way.
Cost is an issue, things like Simple NDN and Micro. There's other vendors out there, like ClickSmith. Now that ClickSmith, which I forgot to talk about actually.
Yeah, and actually, Strategy
Right.
is either has already become an MDM or is about to. Yeah, they were sort of cagey about the announcement.
Right. So, you can also, along with Jamf, it's the other large commercial vendors, of course, AirWatch. AirWatch, you can opt to do custom MDM application and do things like Monkey, solve monkeys and that.
You work
But,
that.
from experience, your population is probably about the upper limit of what ARD can handle.
Yeah,
I would say that.
it's
Yeah.
gonna.
Oh, it's also software engineering.
So, for those of you still on the stream, we have buttons. So the next time you see one of us scenarios people,
This is a great logo.
ask us about the buttons.
I don't know if you guys know what it is.
How long you been at
Motor control,
Yeah.
Oh, I got it working, I got it working with address certificate, sign certificate, so I no longer have to write this for MAC address, which without an Ethernet port, very difficult. So I've got that working.
They don't move.
Jack
It doesn't
configuration
move at all.
profiles, I did my same.
With the lab, that's gonna
Because I
have better
could, I
control.
could put whatever
Yeah.
certificate I want in there.
So you
Connect by
really just have to worry
TLS,
about new
I could put as many
And it works,
pictures as I
yeah.
want.
doing
Great.
it. Because they'll come with
And it
10,
works.
15, until new hardware comes out, you'll be able to downgrade the integration level. And then do your normal imaging thing, your own
What I'm
imaging
saying is,
process.
it has ice integration, I don't know.
Because
if it's
that's
used.
what I was, I
I've
think,
never used-
what
I
I
don't
was
even
really
know.
worrying about the hardware. that
Yes.
was coming.
Oh,
When
yes,
they
yes,
come-
yes, yes,
when they
yes.
announce
You
new
could
hardware,
set it up
that's-
so that it accepts ICE and everything, but it wasn't,
But by then. we're
Jamf
gonna
wasn't
have
the problem.
computers and
Oh,
everything
okay.
coming in July.
yes, that was,
Yeah.
as a matter of fact,
So like, so at WWC, they may
I
announce
just
the
had
hardware,
to, I did import
and-
trusted certificates.
but your order will probably already
To
be
the
in
ICE
place. by
table.
then. Since you're
Then when I went to
so
High Sierra.
you will
that
probably be
didn't work.
okay, at least in the
So
short
I
term.
had to
But
then
by
do a
next year,
version
you'll be
profile
done.
with
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I mean, this year was supposed to be kind of
Manic
the
and with all
goal.
those
Yeah.
all those ones that,
It
the normal
just didn't.
CAs that come with that.
Yeah.
I
You're on-
create
it's perfectly
configuration profile
understandable,
that I
you know.
trusted. And then I said, it's better that way.
Yeah,
So that way I could.
I went last year, so I can't go this year.
But if you're on the Mac admins,
Yes,
there's
they do.
a getting started channel with lots of people that love to answer questions.
Yeah.
So, you can always hit us up in the free channel
You can
too.
actually.
I think that it changes like a little less,
It really.
I don't know any
Yeah, there's only 100
All
of us
it
in the
does
village.
is basically.
And it's really just the usual suspects who chime in every day.
I have no idea what the hell this
Yep.
is.
Well, you can set it up, back address, everything like that, blank space,
Yeah.
all that other crap, which I don't even bother to use. Really, it's not coming, the problem is
But
not
yeah.
coming from here.
The
So
one
there's
thing
no
that I
sense
was
in,
looking
you know.
at recently was the,
So,
Um,
and then once I
your
created the
Mac
configuration
admins,
file, that was great, so. yeah,
Next-
profiles are
next system?
Really helpful.
it was Mac admins Europe,
Especially with smart cards.
it was like a Euro conference, I'm not sure.
Well, there's Mac
Oh,
Sys-
that one, I think,
Mac System News or Macaduck?
Yeah, my,
that one. Oh,
Macaduck?
Macaduck, yeah.
Yeah, the one in London that was happening in February.
There was something on
EP
there.
notified, right?
Um,
We don't really
I'm gonna look at it, I'm gonna look that up.
So like,
Listening
this
to
is
that-
what their base window looks
To his
like.
process,
It's,
and
you know,
there's
I'm like,
a
you can-
bunch of new things that I
so you
was,
set up a- So in this build.
I'm not
that
sure if you
has,
guys listened to it.
I did.
You did?
Yeah.
Preferences
Okay.
file.
Who did
To
this?
set up your,
I remember
user
now.
name. So if I take, say I'll take.
No, I can't remember. I know,
Let's take all this, hold on.
some of it
Let me take all
was,
that.
I
I'm gonna
think
take all
Greg
that
Nagel
and
might
I'm
have
gonna run it.
had something to do with it. Because he was the one who went through actually imaging in iMac Pro. Oh, yeah.
Now if I run.
So
it
what did
through-
it, oh, wasn't Mike Lynn, was
Okay,
it?
so now it
I
runs
don't
it.
remember. I know I listened to it,
So
but I
now
also
this
listened to
can
about
change-
6 of them that day.
If I run-
he had a lot of like ways around it apparently, and I'm probably
Watch the
gonna
window
try
here
to
now.
do that, but I still have to, get.
So now it
used to
changes
the-
everything.
The wording that he was using,
Right,
and just
and then now
like,
it's, now if I run
because
my
if
next
you're saying
command,
that install a net.
Is this open source or commercial?
I don't.
It's
how
open
would-
source, so if I
Yeah,
run
how would that
next
work?
command.
Well,
it's
it's-
basically.
Well,
each user
they're
input.
deprecated. They're deprecated, which means that they're on their way out. Right. I mean,
Seven.
Future OS release.
I assign it,
Yeah.
and it's waiting for
So,
just the file. to
and-
create.
from what I remember of that talk, the way they had to actually image it was to image
So-
one iMac Pro from another
If it's-
after disabling a bunch of stuff.
Right. To
It's,
my keyboard that I just created.
That doesn't.
yeah, it was
Just flip from that.
basically an exercise
And it works well with your, with like Jamf
But-
or anything else?
Yeah,
not
it-
recommended.
Well, I had to
Right.
write everything to
Um,
talk to James.
All right.
So
Yeah,
when
and
I
it's
when I
like-
say everything, it's like literally.
Unless Apple does something,
So.
and I'm honestly, I wouldn't
Just does the
put
calls on the assigned device.
a newer
You can see it's
protocol
calling all these policies.
for
But
NetBoot,
if I.
you know,
device,
outside the
still
realm of
use the 3D
possibility,
ref file that I just
but
created,
until Apple says
and then just bringing
something,
it back to JSS with the API.
they're pushing depth, they're pushing MDM, and that's the way forward.
Right, because
I'm gonna be doing a write-up on this though, on my site,
Apple
so.
core
Where's your site?
enterprise
Year of the
philosophy
geek.
is basically
Oh.
extension of the whole consumer philosophy.
You're the geek out there.
The experience is about the user.
I don't update a lot.
So regardless of whether it's a home user or a work enterprise user, they want the same experience for that. And all this MDM and depth are really just kind of sops to the enterprise IT community in order for them to be able to manage these devices. But still, their entire philosophy is user experience. And how do they make the user experience? And this whole UA MDM is an extension of that because,
It's more secure.
well, it's because Apple's philosophy is the user should be the final arbiter of anything that happens on their computer. And that includes management of the computer, even if it's a company-owned asset. So, and that's where all this is coming from. So that's where all these changes are coming from.
Yeah.
That started way back with like essentially
Yeah. Got the dollar.
with OS 10 Lion, with iOS,
And then bring
and the
it back.
iPhone when it debuted back in 2007. So this has been like a long time coming.
It's, if you wanna like start reading tea leaves and stuff, people believe, and I'm one of those people that believe that this is basically just a way for Apple to lock down their system a little more, so it's more iOS-like.
Right. Well, because
That's
iOS,
disgusting.
because
I know
iOS
it's disgusting tea, but it's looking
iOS
that way,
security
isn't it?
is pretty tight.
What's that?
So iOS security is pretty tight.
It is, but the problem is that,
I gotta run. Hey.
see, man, iOS is pretty tight, but it's, and let's be honest, it's been a pain to deploy iOS devices for a while for multiple users. especially.
One, like, oh, for iPads?
iPads.
Multiple
I mean,
use
yeah, I
iPads?
guess. I mean, the problem is an iPad is not really designed for multiple users, but now it is because they added multiple shared iPads. But
Right.
like, let's look at BSD is a multi-user system. Linux, Unix, the computers are multi-user systems, but like, they're trying to act like they're not. They're trying to give the computer to somebody, and then you don't even have to touch it. It's like,
Right.
but what if you have a lab where 50 people are touch it in a week?
That's not their
You
priority.
Exactly, and the problem is that what about people like that? The people that made your business, the ones that bought thousands of computers from you.
Honestly, I think DEP is going to be a step forward, but there are growing pains.
I'm hoping so. I mean, they have been adding adding the race install. Awesome. I was really happy with that, but then I saw it was only for APFS.
We're in a transition phase.
Yeah, and it's
Big transition phase.
growing pains are really tough when you're managing a lot of machines. When they start taking away things and not giving you an option, giving you something to replace it right away, it's kind of difficult. I mean, I'm pretty sure that I'm pretty vocal about it online on a lot of places and in person. I think it's kind of crappy of them to, we're going to take away NetBoot. Well, what are you going to replace it with? Nothing right now. Okay, thanks.
Just trust us, we'll replace it. That's what you do.
I've been told not to trust corporations by a lot of people.
Oh, no, that's basically what you're saying. Is like,
Yeah, I know.
they're just
And I know. I mean, what I'm really waiting for, and I'm sure a lot of people have the same idea, is the whole button where you can hit erase content and settings
Yes,
on a computer, and it just rolls back to your factory settings, and then it rolls back to a snapshot.
right.
And if they give me that, I'll shut up.
The building blocks for that are in APP.
They are. They really are. And you just
But
need
it's
to
just
get on.
not implemented yet. Yeah, we might see that as early as 10/14.
Yeah.
So, or it might be 10/15. Or
Something.
Whatever they
call it.
Whatever they're calling it.
For 10/14/4.
10/14 California Place.
Are we still live?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
We're not.
No, you're fine.
We're not doing any.
So, do you guys know of any shops? You don't have to give the name of the shop, but any shops that are like 100% iOS?
100%.
As in-
Yeah. So, like, if I'm either a brand new employee, or I'm a new student, or I'm a new vendor, I'm going to get a 12 or 10-inch iPad Pro, and I'm going to get an iPhone, and that's how they manage it. They tell you just to suck it up, get a Bluetooth keyboard. This is your
I
life.
hear some schools are doing that, but I haven't heard of any.
Yeah, schools do
offices,
it.
Yeah.
I've worked with some schools that were like that.
For students.
Yes,
But-
for students,
but-
not like companies.
Yeah, no, but like top down. So, you know,
Mm-mm. Never.
I think only Federico Vitici is the guy who knows how to do everything on his iPad. The rest of us still need computers.
Yeah, no, nobody that I've heard of.
So, I mean, we have over 90,000 iOS devices that we manage. Most of them are field devices, where the field techs will go and do all the things they need to do in the field, either from an iPhone or from an iPad. But yeah, I don't think the iPad is feasible as a complete laptop
Well,
replacement.
what's a computer, sir?
But
I think it is for a lot of home users. I just don't know if it's in a business environment.
so we
well,
have,
because it depends on the business applications.
Right.
Yeah, that you use.
so we have at Cisco, we have a few engineering groups that are almost 100% like they work off of iPad, and there's a few people I don't agree with at all on this that will point out that, you know, you get a screen, get an Apple TV, and AirPlay to a large TV. If you want a nice keyboard, make sure it's Bluetooth. If not, get the USB dongle to put at the end of your iPad. You need to do terminal, you need to do VNC. Well, of course, most of your main computing is already done in the cloud. Why bother with anything local on your machine? From their perspective, you can walk into an Apple store because Cisco has that super awesome, amazing, I could bend my work laptop right now over the table. They're not going to question it. I'm going to go downstairs and get a brand new one. But it's cheaper for them to do that with a bunch of iPads. With Cisco, the biggest concern is security on everything. As you pointed out, security on OS 10 or iOS is amazing to the point that, you know, I'm not jailbreaking these devices. I'm not doing anything with them. I lost it at the airport. They can wipe it. They can walk away from it. And a few of these engineering groups have made some very vocal points of why are we wasting money on getting new MacBooks? Why are we wasting money on getting new iMacs? There's a couple in the hardware channel. I'm the guy that a few people might not agree with, where I pointed out that we still at Cisco have labs with cheese grater Macs. And it wasn't just because, oh, we want something that runs OS 10. It was the hardware was so incredibly stable with thermal fit and everything that you could just rack and stack 10, 15 of these in the thing and walk away from it. So those labs were built around almost everything OS 10. Well, as we slowly move away from that stuff, everybody's starting to go to iPad, and a lot of these groups that were already Apple-oriented are starting to go to iPad. And it scares the living crap out of me that there are people in suits at Cisco that are making serious considerations of what if we were to move everything over to iOS? I mean, we like a lot of people are slowly getting over those hurdles.
Apple would love you for that.
Yeah. I mean, they already love Cisco, I'm sure.
They do. I mean, on a side note, the discounts and the support that you get from Apple, like I worked at Comcast when I first moved here. It's nice and whatnot, but like then I went over to Cisco and I was told, yeah, if you really don't like your 2015 iMac, don't tell anybody, but like throw it under a truck or something and then walk in and go get a new one. Like there's Cisco and Apple have like a very good relationship. Right. So I wouldn't be surprised if there was a conversation in a hallway that said, you know, Tim Cook wants to explore a post-PC world, truly post-Mac OS. Swift Playgrounds has already kind of shown that you can do actually development work. I think the biggest argument internally at Cisco right now is you can do almost all of your engineering work remotely. You know, we have the AWS corporate license that allows us to spin anything that we run up at without cost. And
remote desktop into
and again, the biggest concern that some of us had was like, well, I want a different monitor, or I want something else set up. And they're like, you can either go get a PC and be on your own, or you can get an Apple TV and do AirPlay. So now I'm thinking, because I'm not a Mac admin, I'm the software engineering manager for Cisco for the IP TV unit, and I'm kind of like the evangelist for the group. I've taken like my entire team off of PCs onto Macs, and I've been the guy that's like, this hardware is amazing. And now I'm like afraid that I'm gonna have to eat my words in 6 to 12 months time.
So are you saying, when you, I mean, I got confused when you started talking about using AWS. Are you talking about running everybody's running iOS on their iPad, or are you somehow, is it a thin server client?
So there's a couple engineering groups that have always been Mac oriented, and a lot of them are starting to transition to using a 12-inch iPad Pro with the Bluetooth or the Magic Keyboard combo set, and then they do all of their compute and their development work over terminal or a VNC client, and then that's all remote. So we have a specialty AWS and Google Cloud license, and a lot of large corporations will have this where, as a dev, I can just go spin something up in there, do my work, and spin it down or say it to someone else. And
reminds me I have to set up a page.
Yeah, so I mean, if the iPad is the client, then obviously you can do whatever you want as long as you're happy with the screen size.
Now that we get into the other world of like, personally for me, like I've got a bunch of virtualized things locally.
I think all that really depends on what you're developing for, because like on the Mac OS you can develop for iOS, obviously, Mac OS, Android specifically. And you can't do that. You can't do that type of development, multi-platform development on iOS yet. Like, there's no Xcode on iOS.
Yeah.
So, I mean, technically, yes, you can remote into a box that has Xcode.
And that's from these teams' perspective. That's what they're already doing. I mean, like, there's a Mac and a cloud service right now you can get signed up for, and then VNC from your iPad. And the only annoying part is you gotta like touch to move the cursor and all that, but.
Is that a third-party service that we can all sign up for?
Yeah, I think it's, if you just Google Mac in the cloud, they essentially take that iMac.
Yeah, there's a couple of them that you can do that to let you develop.
And the neat thing with those is you can run like a full through VNC, and even VNC over the browser. You can run a full-fledged Mac and do Xcode and whatnot, and they pay by the hour. So if you're like, this is a day job thing, or I want to convince my boss, I want to like, this is how our productivity will improve with OS 10. You can do that right on the fly. But from our perspective, I've got a bunch of like internal tools that I developed for OS 10. I I've got only my iPad in front of me. Well, I need to run this in Darwin or whatever. So let me spin something up quick, and there we go.
I would say that I don't know if everybody has it. I'm with you with that though. Like I'm a little worried about where the future is going with it because I like having a full-fledged desktop in front of me where I don't have to connect to a VNC or a virtual host.
We talked about it earlier, the iOS, macOS convergence. And there's definitely going to be more of that along the way.
Especially with them possibly more than likely moving to ARM processors.
I'm not sure if we do that.
That's another side conversation of like the whole Intel is lagging. That's why Mac is lagging. No offense. But another thing too is like if let's say in the future of Mac continues on, I still get my MacBook Pro, or we get the world's thinnest, lightest, and most amazing or Mac Pro, and they do go to A10, A12, or whatever. These are not going to be unlocked machines. That's when the moment that you have like full root access to a machine that like that's the secret sauce of the A series processors.
If you want that, you have to keep like machines.
These are going to be locked. These are going to be iPads with keyboards and cursors.
Like 2017 Touchbook Pro is probably going to be one of the last ones.
Yeah. So you lost me at that jump there. What is it about the ARM processor that forces that? Because ARM processor operates to some different layers.
With generic, like ARM is just the instruction set, and generic ARM, like you look at Samsung and Qualcomm, they develop their own processors, and they're fairly open. And when they're open, you can run all kind of software. You can kind of actually get an idea of like this is the special sauce that makes the Aerox whatever Dragon crappy processor from Samsung work really well. Apple, because they put a lot of engineering talent into specialized instruction sets for graphics, specialized instruction sets for network processing and whatnot, the moment that you kind of pull back the cloth and let somebody run things in root, if you're competing, like if you're Samsung and you're an engineer and you're like, well, why does the A10 Fusion run so much faster than my latest stuff? You can spend a lot of time figuring out with a rooted, full-blown access, these are the benchmarks I ran, these are the development tools I was able to run, I was able to figure out why the special magic sauce for the...
So you're saying there'll be parts of the chip that are locked down. That doesn't mean they can't have root access on the desktop.
Oh, no, I'm pretty sure we're going to enter a world of like there'll be that pseudo root.
We already have.
But I want to be clear where you're saying what's factual and where you're extrapolating for the future. So there's nothing about it that says that we can't have root access in Unix on the ARM chip, right?
If it's generic ARM, like you can right now, a bunch of Windows 10 machines are just running off of ARM. You can have full access.
Surfaces, right?
What?
Surface?
Well, like the old school Surfaces, those are actually locked down.
So embedded stuff.
Asus and Acer both have like ARM netbooks right now that full-blown ARM. They're really slow and they run Windows, but they're technically rooted and unlocked. A lot of Chromebooks, the reason why they're kind of locked down is, again, it's a lot of people don't want to see the special sauce that makes some of them fast. Like the Samsung ones were apparently really hard to root for Chromebooks, but they also ran custom Samsung processors on them. So given the history of Apple, if you are fearing that your competitors are going to get an edge up on why the, again, A10 Fusion or A12 Fusion is so amazing, you don't want to open the door. And it doesn't also help their security side of things. Like, you're never going to see an iOS device that's coming pre-jailbroken. And part of that is a lot of the secure enclave and then the A10 series processors. So I would expect that in a future where a MacBook Pro was running an A10, that we're not going to get this full unrooted. And there's been a lot of hints and whatnot that says Apple really, their preferred way of doing things would be you'll do everything through the App Store. You'll do everything through managed profiles.
Right, and the thing is that, okay, so if they announce that at WWDC, everybody there's going to stand up and ask for the $1,500 back, because that's going to blow out every developer in the world.
You better do
it. So I mean, like, I follow your logic.
Well, it won't blow out every developer.
But
no, I mean, because there's...
It's not going to be a night and day change either. I mean, it's what you're going to see is you're going to probably have that version of a MacBook in probably about a year. They're probably going to go to Intel and say, hey, we've got this thin and light laptop that is performing just as fast as your stuff, but we don't have to pay you $120 for processor. It costs us $5 to do it.
No, basically, I'm following you there. I think you're making a logical leap that I don't follow you. I mean, I understand you, I don't agree with you. So basically, my thing is that when Apple announced 2 months ago that they're shutting down pretty much everything about Mac OS X server that my clients use, which means between now and October, when 10.14 comes out, we've got to figure out what to do there. So that was a huge blow. I agree with you that Apple is making some big moves, but any developer who ships a third-party app with a trial period is outside the Mac App Store. There's thousands of apps that have to be outside the Mac App Store because they can't be sandboxed. So
Adobe.
I don't buy that Apple is willing to blow away all those developers and all of the users who rely on some level of access deeper than what this iOS-ified Mac would look like.
Well,
that's
I think
the
the key there will be getting Adobe and getting Microsoft into the App Store.
I mean, Microsoft has been moving towards it anyway. I mean,
Yeah, Microsoft
all their
is moving
apps,
towards the
most
App
of their
Store.
apps are basically sandbox already.
Yes.
They have, there's a few things that are still left over, but there's a reason why all of their apps are over a gig now instead of everything being 4 gigs.
But like,
Because they're all sandbox.
like company like Adobe and like Digit for Digit Design and like all
Any of these
all that sort of like
companies.
traditional Mac AV creative market. If they can get those guys into the App Store, then it's essentially game.
I think the gating thing for a lot of developers, it's not so much that the platform is locked down as it's the App Store policies of 30% of your revenue for subscriptions. And like that's if you look at Adobe and they have their Creative Con or whatever. Like a couple months ago, and they just made a brief mention of like what revenue looked like for them, and it's now almost all coming straight up from subscriptions. So if you were to tell them you need to take 30% of that and hand that over to Apple, and like the Microsoft Store does the same thing now, like they're going to be like, oh no. But if we were to say for Premier partners, we'll look the other way or something like that. I've really kind of been a wait and see moment to see what they do with the Mac Pro. Like I bought an iMac Pro on faith, and the iMac Pro is an amazing, beautiful machine, minus the memory upgrade nightmare that I'm probably going to encounter down the road. But like, if the iMac Pro is that, when they meant modular, they don't mean a bunch of, as the one dude at the hardware chat said, like a Thunderbolt containers with like PCI Express expansion slot breakout boxes, and it's just essentially the cheese grater come back. I'll be like, okay, cool, you can do whatever you want with the mobile line. I have a piece of hardware that runs OS 10 on x86. That tells me I'll probably be able to do anything with it. But if it's like,
well, I think
Glorified iPad.
Well, no, I think there's probably going to be a two-pronged strategy. I think the Pro line will probably still be recognizably Mac from there, but again, they'll probably focus it all specifically. It'll have secure boot. It'll have all these. Eventually, they'll have secure enclave on all the devices, so that do like that iOS security model as well. So it generates certs at the factory, and file vault encryption is done based on the secure enclave, and everything runs through secure enclave, including the hard drive. So. But yeah, the consumer, like the MacBooks and the iMacs that are not Pro, those will probably be more locked down. The distinguishing them between like MacBook and iPad will probably be very minimal. So essentially, like a MacBook will be an iPad Pro with a built-in keyboard.
And maybe like extra.
I don't necessarily mind that. It's just when I talk to, our engineering teams, and they're like, we want to make a big push to iOS everything or whatnot, and I want to be able to say, no, this is not what the future looks like 100%.
Well, not 100%. I think there's probably going to be use cases.
Yeah. Well, so
especially if they bring Xcode to iOS.
If they bring Xcode to iOS and it performs amazingly well, and they have a way to virtualize at least multiple iOS instances in there, I will eat my own words and I'll be happy with that.
Right.
But I don't want a suit telling me that, hey, our new service agreement with Apple says rather than getting a new top line 2015 MacBook or MacBook Pro, whatever it is, you'll get the latest, the greatest iPad or Lenovo, and then you'll be like,
Yeah, I'm just thinking about the clients I've worked with, and it's absolutely true that an iPad, especially iOS 11, huge iOS 11 versus 10, there was just huge advances in using it as a work machine. But even my most basic clients, barely know how to drag things to the trash, have multiple windows on the screen.
Yeah.
iOS, you get 2. So when you start talking about virtualizing machines, I can go with you to a part there. I don't think most people don't understand that you can, what VNC is like, how that works, and what it means to spin up a computer for 30 minutes. But the fact that every Mac user I've ever seen is that 5 windows open on the screen, and almost none of them use the full screen option, like only the Windows migrants use full screen.
there was a build of, I guess it was OS 9 or iOS 9 for iPad, way back when somebody dipped around with the code and figured out that there was a windowing feature somewhere in there.
Yeah, I saw a movie about that.
And so somebody figured it out and made that build for it and played around with it. And it's like, if iOS can figure out windowing and figure out the high performance compute key, so whether it's iCloud makes the next one.
iOS, they don't want iOS to figure out what they're doing. Even if they could, the closest you'll ever get is maybe instead of half and half, you'll get quadrants, but you'll never get overlapping windows. And I doubt you'll do quadrants because then each one's going to be way too small. You use it as a screen shooter.
I mean, you can't do the split view on handheld. What I'm expecting is with iOS, you'll have 3 classes. You'll have handheld, you'll have tablet, and you'll have large format, the laptop. And I would expect with the laptop, the big thing for most people is that, and that form factor for iOS, if they can say, okay, let's either figure out the workflows that people use windowing in and make that as seamless as possible, or let's just add the iOS-friendly version of windowing. And then to tie it all together would be that one-off high compute thing that you need to do that needs a little bit more access than the OS can serve. Here's a service in the cloud that can do this, or maybe you already have a Mac at home, a Mac Pro, something or another. Automatically tie into that and do the rest.
Yeah, I mean that works great in this room. Even my clients who understand 90% of what you just said wouldn't understand the last 10% of wait, I don't own a Mac anymore. I have an iPad and it works like a Mac. That's just a leap. That's a leap too far for them. I can't believe Apple. I mean, Apple sells to, it has managed to sell Unix computers to people who don't know what a computer is, right?
Yeah.
I can't believe that they're going to sell virtualized machines in any way to the end user.
They did announce in their quarterly earnings that they're making a big push for services, and the last thing in services they've not touched is iCloud, other than adding storage tiers. And I would think for Apple, given what they've signed with Google Compute and what a lot of other people are trying to push out there, is if they can offer some kind of compute service. So if I'm with a device that doesn't have a lot of horsepower, but I have internet somehow, and I can say, okay, I need to compile something, or maybe I need to do some kind of CAD rendering in the cloud, or something intensive in the cloud where latency isn't so much an issue, it's just the output. I think Apple would be more than happy to sell me for $399 a year.
I would if that, okay, I can see a possibility of that route. If that were to happen, my guess would be 3 to 5 years of selling that to pro users who want to have like a thin client and a Mac Pro that they can access on the road. It would be nice to have a Mac Pro sitting at my desk.
Yeah.
While I'm sitting here. But at least 10 years before that's being sold downstairs to an end user. You can do that for your corporate clients. You can do that to your pro users. You can't do that to the average person walking in the store to buy an iPhone.
I mean, the way they position the iPad, we've gone from this is a cool toy that I can't do much with, but I can read the New York Times while taking a poop, to like a legitimate Office on iPad. As much as I don't like the iOSification of everything, Office on iPad with the keyboard is amazing. And it's when I have managers that are seriously considering moving their teams to iPads, it tells me, okay, we've had iPad now for 8 years, and realistically, it's probably when the 3rd generation, the Retina generation came in, there was enough horsepower behind that, and we finally saw the first apps that were like, these are the content creator apps. Like, that tells me that if Apple says our goal is to take the best of the walled garden, the best of services revenue and the best of the pro experience and find a way to marry them, and it's going to be around the iPad. And we want customers to be buying this. Of course, they're not going to do this. You're not going to see like Marco Arment's worst nightmare of, the next day they get rid of all the Intel stuff. It's probably then WWDC introducing things like, Marzipan, whatever the rumors are, or whatever it might be. They'll offer frameworks that make that transition possible, like they did back with Rosetta. They'll say, hey, this is going to be our first product probably in the fall that leverages this. Then, you had like 6 months of this, oh, this is our next product. And then 2 years.
Another 2-year transition like they did with Intel.
And if they're going to do it, I mean, they're going to do it. And I can't really.
I have 2 questions for you. Well, two bits of homework to add to your draft. I mean, I think about it. I'm skeptical, but I'm not saying you're wrong. First is, I work in Starbucks every day. Depending on where my meetings are, it'll be the one across the street or the one on campus. But I walk in there and I always take a note of how many Windows laptops versus Mac laptops. Thanks. So, usually MacBooks are dominating the room. I can't remember the last time I saw somebody working on an iPad or a keyboard. Once or twice, but I think I've seen as many people on a Windows tablet as on an iPad. And until I see it half and half iPads and MacBooks, I don't buy that transition for the people downstairs.
So when I was at Comcast, I did kind of a similar account at in 1717 Arch, where we would have our daily syndication meetings and whatnot. Everybody would be out, and a lot of these managers are trying to show off with like whatever the software are. You've seen this, there's no reason why you need a MacBook Pro, but the guy ends up with a MacBook Pro.
Yeah.
So it was about 30% were PCs and 70% were just regular MacBook Pros. And the iPad Pro 12-inch came out, and over the course of a month, it was 30% PCs, 10% iPad Pros, and the rest MacBook Pros. And that iPad Pro group started to grow more and more and more. And then a couple of them actually had the.
So, I'm sorry. What population are you talking about now?
This is at Comcast in a conference room with about like 30 different people, and talking to the tech support guys. Well, they were trying to push people onto like Dell's or Jeep, or somebody had like a Chromebook initiative that they wanted to try. What I found out was a lot of people were going to the iPad Pro because the Office software suite was great enough. They needed to be able to write in Outlook. Most of them, and you see this too in the airport, like I need to be able to quickly whip something out that already has self-service built in, that I can do XYZ real quick and do it. And because people are not like us or like me, where you want to have 2 laptops in your bag all the time, that they just won't want them to do things off of. And
Surface Books has replaced those.
And this other thing too is like back home in Microsoft land, it's almost like I've seen that wave of 10 years ago, everybody had a Mac in Starbucks, and 5 years ago, it was still mostly Macs and a few random PCs, and now it's 50-50 of some variant of the Surface or Surface Book and then a Mac. But there's, again, as much as I don't like it, I see a very strong use case